Hello, it's the 14th of September and you're watching Arirang News. Coming to you from Seoul, I'm Kwon Jang-ho and it's great to have you with us. It's D-4 till the third Inter-Korean Summit between President Moon Jae-in and Kim Jong-un takes place in North Korea. Preparations are being finalised and anticipation is building. We take a look ahead at what to expect later in the show, but first we start with the latest updates with Devin Whiting at the News Centre. Devin?
Hi, Jang-ho. Ahead of that summit, the two Koreas have taken another important step. Today, they opened a liaison office in the North Korean border city of Kaesong, which will enable the two sides to keep in touch face-to-face virtually any time. It was supposed to open last month, but it was delayed by concerns in the U.S. that it was a step too far. The hope is that the liaison office will help stabilize inter-Korean relations and boost exchanges. Our Park Hee-jun reports.
A 24-hour round-the-clock communication channel. For the first time in the two Koreas' history, a full-time liaison office has been launched to enhance inter-Korean exchanges.
The liaison office has opened a new chapter in our history. It's a symbol of peace created by the two Koreas.
It was achieved by the two Koreas' efforts. We must continue to implement the Panmunjom Declaration, the goal of the people.
The facility will be supervised by the Vice Minister of South Korea's Unification Ministry, Chun Hae-sung, and his North Korean counterpart, Chun Jong-soo. Around 20 officers from each side will reside at the office, working 9 to 5 shifts during the week, as well as overnight shifts and weekend duty. A regular meeting will be held at least once a week to discuss urgent issues relevant to the two Koreas, including joint economic projects. The office will also support cooperation between civilians and enhance information exchanges for business people. But more importantly, it can send messages directly to South Korean President Moon Jae-in and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un.
Then the reason why we have one is, diplomatically speaking, is actually a step before having an embassy or like a formal representative office in both capitals. So in that sense, it signifies permanence of the relations, improved relations between the two Koreas. So it's very symbolic in nature, but at the same time, it shows that politically, both countries will have to take into account the inter-Korean relations when it comes to formulating their external policies from now on.
And according to the Unification Ministry, depending on the level of improvement in relations, South and North Korea could consider setting up offices in each other's capitals. Setting up a liaison office was one of the agreements reached at the April 27 Inter-Korean Summit. It will be a significant step in advancing inter-Korean relations and establishing peace and stability on the Korean Peninsula. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
Now, opening the joint liaison office today is an important step, considering that we're just a few days away from the next Inter-Korean Summit. Hong Yoo takes a closer look at the process the two Koreas went through to get the office open and what it means.
For the first time in history, South and North Korea have created a permanent communication channel that allows contact any day, any time. And with this, a new future of active communication between the two Koreas has begun. In the Panmunjom Declaration, which was signed at the end of the first summit between President Moon Jae-in and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, the two leaders agreed to create the joint liaison office to allow constant communication, support interactive summits between the two Koreas, and promote civilian exchanges. The office was agreed to be located in the North Korean city of Kaesong. Then, at the high-level talks which were held on June 1st, Seoul and Pyeongyang narrowed the venue down to the Kaesong Industrial Complex, a joint factory park they ran together until February 2016. But the complex, having been abandoned for the last couple of years, needed some renovations. So the two Koreas examined the complex in June, and renovations started in July. In August, Seoul and Pyeongyang signed a written agreement on how to manage the joint liaison office. And during the most recent visit by the South Korean special delegation to North Korea, the two sides agreed to open the office before the third Moon Kim summit.
Now, the officials of the two Koreas are in the same place for 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. So they can meet easily to discuss important issues and reach an agreement. This joint liaison office will not only be a tool for political conversation, but will also be a window for civilian interaction.
South Korean President Moon said peace is economy. So by opening the joint liaison office in Kaesong, hopefully when the nuclear issue comes to an end after this upcoming summit, the Kaesong industrial complex could be reopened.
Hong Yu, Arirang News.
Now, officials from South Korea's presidential office are meeting today with their North Korean counterparts ahead of next week's summit to do some final planning. Let's go to our Shin Se-min at the presidential office. Se-min, we know the officials left already. Any developments on that front?
Right. Still no word from the officials holding talks at the Inter-Korean border village of Panmunjom, Devon. Early this morning, the press corps here received a message at around 7:30 informing us of their departure to the Inter-Korean border village. And little over 8 hours have passed since their departure this morning. Still no detail on the progress of the talks just yet. But during their discussions today, we should be able to learn some of the details about the upcoming summit between the leaders next week, which will be held in the North Korean capital for the third time in modern Korean history. And today's meeting will be about President Moon's itinerary and some of the schedules and events to be held during his 3-day stay in the North Korean capital from next Tuesday. And on top of that, there is the list of South Korean delegates who will accompany the president, which the two Koreas have agreed to keep the size at 200 people. But again, Devin, we already know a few people who will be definitely joining the president, the newly elected chair of the ruling Democratic Party, Lee Hae-chan, and some other South Korean business leaders as well. But we should know the full list soon, in the matter of hours' time. And on top of that, the two sides are also set to hash out some of the details like security and the extent of media coverage as well. Devin, back to you.
All right, we'll be looking forward to updates on that. Thanks, Se-min. Meanwhile, military talks between colonels from the two Koreas that began Thursday morning ended on Friday just before dawn after 17 hours. The marathon session appears to have been successful. Both sides apparently deepened their trust and understanding of the need to reduce tensions along the DMZ. A South Korean military source said they discussed in detail how to do that in ways including the joint recovery of war remains, mutual disarmament at the joint security area, and the withdrawal of troops at some guard posts on a trial basis. The source added that in case more discussions are needed prior to the summit, the two sides will talk via the military communication lines on the western side of the peninsula. And more signs North Korea is sticking to its pledge to denuclearize. The regime is dismantling certain facilities, but it's unclear if the steps it's taken are permanent. U.S.-based North Korea monitoring website 38 North says commercial satellite pictures show a shelter at a truck factory in the city of Pyeongyang was torn down, rebuilt, and dismantled again over the course of 8 months. The shelter was first built in mid-October last year, and it was later revealed to have been used to test the launcher for the regime's Hwasong-15 ICBM. In March, the shelter's covering was removed, but in April, the structural framework was rebuilt, and by September, only the reinforced pad was left. 38 North said, however, that there's no clear explanation for those activities. I'm Devin Whiting, and those are your news headlines.
There are now just 4 days to go until the third summit between South Korean President Moon Jae-in and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, this time in the North Korean capital, Pyongyang. Many positive developments have been made on the Korean peninsula since their first meeting in April, but now it comes as negotiations between the US and North Korea on the regime's denuclearization have hit a wall in recent weeks. A heavy burden will be on President Moon's shoulders to try and help restart progress on that, while trying to continue developing the inter-Korean relationship as well. Our Blue House correspondent Hwang Ho-jun takes a look at the agenda of the summit.
This year's first Inter-Korean Summit in April was a landmark in inter-Korean relations. The second one, behind closed doors in May, resuscitated talks between Pyongyang and Washington and ultimately made possible the historic Kim-Trump summit in Singapore. So for the third Inter-Korean Summit of 2018, what might be on the table?
In this summit, the two Koreas have agreed to review the implementation of the Panmunjom Declaration and discuss its future direction. Also, they will draw up practical ways to establish a lasting peace and to ensure joint prosperity, especially through the denuclearization of the Korean peninsula.
Probably the most significant point to watch this time in Pyongyang will be President Moon resuming his role as the so-called mediator between North Korea and the U.S., especially with relations between Pyongyang and Washington seemingly deadlocked. North Korea has demanded that in conjunction with its denuclearization efforts, the Korean War must be declared officially over. But the U.S. has insisted that North Korea first take practical steps, such as disclosing the status of its nuclear facilities and ballistic missiles. The tension led to President Trump canceling his Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's planned visit to Pyongyang last month. So the spotlight will be on whether President Moon is able to come up with a compromise for the two sides and break through the stalemate. Also on the agenda, of course, will be practical measures to continue improving relations between Seoul and Pyongyang. The two Koreas have already kept some of the promises they made in April, establishing a joint liaison office and holding dialogue and negotiations in various fields. Check. Jointly participating in international sporting events such as the 2018 Asian Games. Check. Holding reunions of separated families. Check. And of course, the summit in Pyongyang itself is also a fulfillment of the Panmunjom Declaration. So this time, it seems they'll need to talk about easing military tensions and boosting their economic cooperation.
President Moon has insisted that advancements in inter-Korean relations are the driving force behind the denuclearization of the Korean peninsula. It will be the first time the two leaders have met in 4 months, so the world is eager to hear their assessment of how much progress has been made toward the goal of putting a formal end to the Korean War by the end of this year, as stated in the Panmunjom Declaration. Hwang Ho-jun, Arirang News.
Now, to help us look towards that summit, we have with us Professor Song Se-ryun from Kyung University. Professor, it's good to have you back on our show.
Good to be here.
Now, as we just heard in that report, there's a lot of expectation from these talks, but working-level talks only took place today. That's 4 days before the actual summit. There are some concerns have been expressed that over this short preparation time. Do you have any concerns yourself, Professor?
Well, it does look a little bit hurried. But I think that there is not much of a concern at this point because North Korea had their own national holidays in the meantime. And I look at the list of things to be resolved, and those are mostly logistical stuff. So I think that the intention to meet, the intention to hammer out something has been there on both sides. So I think it's a matter of just getting to the details, and probably we have enough time to do that in 3-4 day period.
What are some of those details that we can expect that they discussed today?
Well, some of the things would be the detailed schedule of the locations and where President Moon will have some sort of talks or some kind of event in the North Korea. And of course, the protocol and security issues and how many people will accompany as a delegate in there. I think there is a principal agreement that the size would be about 200 people from the South, including the businessmen and the politicians.
Those are very logistical concerns, but what about the more heavier stuff that they still need to hash out? For example, they want to try and talk about improving inter-Korean relations, but also, I think perhaps more importantly, President Moon has this agenda to try and become the mediator between North Korea and the US. And they need to talk about denuclearization. Do you think that kind of thing needs to be worked out first? Or does the fact that this summit is over 3 days will mean there's plenty of time for them to talk about it there?
I think, as you mentioned, that's the meat of it. I think that the form and venue and how they meet, that's the secondary stuff that they can hammer out in a short period of time. But the heavy issue of making some progress during this meeting is heavy on, I think, the President Moon's mind, and also the leader Kim Jong-un's mind as well. I suspect the White House is looking at this thing as well. I think that the window of opportunity for making progress between the North Korea and the U.S. Is a great one for both parties, and to an extent it's kind of narrowing a little bit because of the domestic problems that Donald Trump has in the U.S. And also, if there's a midterm election coming up in the U.S., and if it does not be resolved to the satisfaction of Donald Trump, probably a lot of meanings could be lost. So, in a sense, that the best scenario that that Kim Jong-un has at this point is to elevate these peace talks as a helping Donald Trump to be recast or regain the reputation that he intended as a peacemaker, the world peacemaker, and push that into a kind of a bargaining chip in this main talks. So if that were to happen, the progress has to be made in terms of defining what the denuclearization is, and also the logistical progress as to the subsequent North Korea-U.S. summit. So those things probably still uncertain, and probably both leaders trying to hammer out and make some progress.
What do you think North Korea actually can try and get out of this meeting then? Obviously, you talked about what they want with the US, but they have this summit with South Korea first. What is their aim for this summit, do you think? What is their plan for this summit?
The being a mediator role in this process from the President Moon Jae-in's point of view is to get both parties to a certain platform so that they can move forward. I think that's the reason why the South Korean government has proposed some mediated the roadmap. One is to have some sort of commitment from the North Korea, whether it be oral form or written form, about the nuclear inspection they have been resisting. I think that could lead to the declaration of the end of the war that both parties have talked about in ultimum. And that could lead to more detailed, maybe a formation of the working group between the North and the U.S. to look at the issues more concrete manner, the term of the denuclearization and what kind of safety devices or the inspection schedules can be worked out. So I think that's a great move at this point, but I think what it depends on would be the kind of a negative move that has been formed in the U.S. about those intentions of the North Korea. And generally, Donald Trump is very preoccupied with the domestic quagmire that he is in. So whether we have something that is noticeable and commands attention from Donald Trump and the U.S. government, probably that would be the thing. The North Korea has been kind of hedging their bet in order to not to give too much in the negotiation. They have China as a kind of alternative, and they've been kind of smiling and stalling. But of course, the ultimate focus is not stalling. They want to make a progress, but in their own terms. So this is going to be a very delicate balancing act, a tightrope act. But I think the burden is there to make progress substantially, but at the same time to the satisfaction of all the parties.
So how does President Moon tackle this? What is his plan of action? How does he prepare for this kind of meeting?
I think that although this is a meeting between the North and South Summit, what is more important from the President Moon Jae-in's part is to have a close communication and coordination with the White House. Well, I think the same token, I think the North Korea would have a close relationship with China in terms of the progress. So I think there will be a lot of background or behind the screen actions to get the necessary parties in the same page. And that would be a greatest challenge, I think.
This is, of course, the third meeting between President Moon and Kim Jong-un. But actually, this time what's special is the fact that it'll be happening in Pyongyang in over 3 days. Now, this is only the third time that there's been this kind of meeting in Pyongyang. The first was obviously in 2000, the next one in 2007. Looking back at those, we can't help but look back at those Inter-Korean summits as well. What do you think are some of the main differences, and do you think there will be certain similarities in the proceedings?
I think the similarities would be that both parties want to make the progress in terms of peace process. I think that North Korea would look at it as kind of an optics issue. If the President Moon Jae-in goes there, probably he'll fly in to the Pyongyang International Airport because of the road conditions that Kim Jong-un has mentioned. Probably he wants to be there. Kim wants to be there as a video would show that both are smiling and both are maybe kind of in a close embrace to show that they're together in this effort, and probably that'll assure the other parties that as long as North and South leaders are in locksteps, probably it'll make things easier in terms of ironing out the rough patches that are abound at this point. So that optics issue, but at the same time, probably there will be a lot of move to have the details ironed out, even in this short period of time. I think we saw the precursor of that by looking at the military side. The pre-summit meeting, they have had a very long meeting. I think when we say the devil is in the details, I think we're getting to that stage. The ultimate detail of this process, of course, militarily, would be those details they iron out in NLL issues and all those.
Let me get into that. So, for example, today there was military. Yesterday, sorry, on Thursday, there was military working level talks, which started on Thursday, but they ended on Friday at 3 a.m. They were said to have gone on for 17 hours. I mean, the official line is that the talks were successful and everything went well, but 17 hours, that must mean there was some issues that they couldn't quite agree on quite easily. Perhaps this will go into what happens at the summit next week as well. I mean, what do you think? What do you think about this?
So far, I think it's positive because, like I mentioned, we have a broad agreement, but the devil is in the details. The details, when we're talking about the military matters and all those surveillance related issues, there are numerous things. I mean, I could see the 17 hours is probably not enough time to address all the issues at this point, unless that kind of difficulties in terms of getting to a quick resolution is used by the political leaders to say that, see, we cannot go forward because this is a deal-breaking matter. Until we hear that kind of noise from the political side, probably I would say that they're working hard. It doesn't matter how long it takes. Get it done.
One last development before we go that I'd like to cover is the US announced also on Thursday that they have slapped more sanctions on North Korea and on entities related to North Korea anyway. They sanctioned 2 companies, one Chinese and one Russian, and they also sanctioned one North Korean individual who's supposedly related to cyber attacks that the US has suffered. Now, relations between the US and North Korea had been improving in recent weeks, but to suddenly have these sanctions sends quite a negative message, wouldn't you say?
Probably I'll have the same kind of attitude about this. U.S. has a hawkish factions and dovish actions on this issue, and there are departments working on the sanctions, and they have not formally stopped the sanctions. So in a way, you can look at it as they're doing their job. Until, and I guess what we will look for is whether Donald Trump or the leaders that leading the negotiation would say that, see, because of the provocations on the cyber side in North Korea, we have to stop this process, and we cannot trust North Korea because of this. If that becomes kind of the reason to stop it or stall it or put a significant roadblock on this, until that happens, probably I would say that they're just doing their job.
I guess they have to keep pressure on the North Korea. I guess it's a reminder that to North Korea that that things aren't settled yet. That we still want denuclearization, and this is another poke reminding them that there's still sanctions on them. Would you say?
Very much so.
One more thing before we go. We've got a little bit of time left. The Joint Liaison Office was open today as well. What significance does that have between the relations between the 2 Koreas as well? Just briefly.
Well, the different forms of those kind of devices have existed. I think it's very positive because that means 24/7 they can iron out issues if they have to. But I think this is also a subordinate issue. This usefulness of this device is only good if it promotes the talk between the North and the U.S. and also continuing North-South relationships. It can go by the wayside very quickly if the political situation deteriorates. So I think it's a very impactful as long as the leaders keep the progressive point in their sight.
Well, that's what we have time for. Thank you for coming in today, and it's always great to have you back on the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
The third Inter-Korean Summit between Moon Jae-in and Kim Jong-un will be taking place next week from Tuesday till Thursday. As the official English-language broadcaster of the summit, Arirang TV will be bringing you full coverage of the historic event throughout the 3 days. So do join us again then for another important milestone in the Korean Peninsula's history. Thank you for watching and goodbye for now.
남관계에 있어서 그동안 군사적 긴장과 대결 구도를 최대한 해소하면서 평화로운 한반도로 가는 것이 매우 중요하다. 특히 DMZ 내에서 실질적인 DMZ의 비무장화, 이것도 매우 중요한 것이고, 또 교류협력이 구체적으로 앞으로 평화를 달성하는 데 있어서 중요한 역할을 한다. 이런 점에서 인도적인 측면이나 또는 전반적으로 유엔 제재에서 비껴가 있는 그런 부분에서의 교류협력은 충분히 활성화될 필요가 있다고 봅니다. 다만 이제 당장 북한과의 경제 교류협력은 유엔과 미국의 제재가 있는 속에서 어렵기 때문에 그 문제는 지금 당장 복원되기는 쉽지 않을 것 같습니다. 그렇지만 산림협력이나 또는 철도를 보다 적극적으로 남북이 협력해서 철도를 잇는 작업, 이런 부분들은 매우 중요한 사업이고 또 북한도 요구하고 있는 사업이다라고 봐야 됩니다. 그래서 유엔과 국제사회 제재를 우리가 우회할 수 있는 또는 유엔 제재에서 그것이 해당되지 않는 그런 분야 종목들을 최대한 발굴해서 남북 간의 경제 교류 협력도 활발하게 할 수 있는 그런 토대를 지금부터 닦아야 된다. 산림협력과 같은 경우는 유엔 제재 대상이 아니기 때문에 지금부터 바로 시행을 할 필요가 있고, 철도 협력을 비롯한 전반적인 경제 교류 협력은 우선은 그 제재가 풀리기 전에는 최대한 그것의 준비를 철저하게 하면서 제재가 풀린과 동시에 바로 경제 교류 협력으로 나아가는 그런 준비를 할 필요가 있다고 봅니다. 당장 눈앞에 보이는 사파 싸움, 북미 간의 사파 싸움, 여기에 매몰되기보다는 그러한 현상들을 최대한 적극적으로 풀어나가면서도 큰 틀에서 북미 관계의 진행 상황 또는 한반도 문제를 풀어가는데 한국의 역할이 매우 중요하다. 그 과정에서 문재인 대통령께서 촉진자 역할을 보다 적극적으로 할 수 있는 그런 노력을 기울일 필요가 있고, 그 과정에서 한반도의 비핵화 평화 체제가 성과를 거두는 그 과정은 또 다른 차원에서 보면은 실질적인 한반도의 평화를 구체적으로 달성시키는 그런 과정이기 때문에 보다 중요한 것은 비핵화 평화 체제에 대한 한국의 적극적인 어떤 거중 조정, 문재인 대통령의 촉진자 역할, 이 부분이 앞으로도 매우 중요하다고 봅니다.